Hello everyone, this is Haiysei, and today I'd like to discuss the current state of Charge Blade in Monster Hunter Wilds. So before we begin, I'd just like to say that I'm an avid Charge Blade player, and I always have been, and I've absolutely loved or enjoyed my time with Charge Blade in Monster Hunter Wilds. That being said, with all the new 9-star monsters, and the difficulty's been gradually rising in Wilds, I do feel like Charge Blade's been struggling to keep up in a way that's fun. Charge Blade hasn't really struggled with damage as much as something like Switch Axe has, where all its damage is all in one move. But the enjoyment of how the game expects you to play the weapon has gradually declined. I feel like we were already really shoehorned into spamming axe attacks at the beginning of Wilds, and I feel like that hasn't really improved over time. The current state of Charge Blade in Wilds is that we can't SAD, it's practically useless unless you're running an elemental build, and even then you're better off doing something else entirely. We can't use our sword and shield for damage, because it's just completely outclassed by our axe attacks. And even our axe attacks, we're more incentivized to spam AEDs than we are incentivized to use the rest of our kit. I feel like Charge Blade is an insanely versatile weapon with a lot of tools in its kit, and yet we only have like a couple of attacks that we're actually allowed to use, and that's insane to me. I feel like we're at a point now where Charge Blade has to do all the setup that no other weapon really has to do for no reward whatsoever. We have to charge our shield, we have to charge our axe, all for what? Just so we can be a viable weapon? Meanwhile, you've got stuff like Greatsword just doing things without having all the setup. Our SAD takes longer than the true charged, and yet we barely have any reward to show for it. Now, I realized this while playing with one of my friends. This isn't just a charge blade thing, it's with all the guard weapons. Greatsword Tackle is actually better at taking attacks head-on than perfect parrying with a guard is. You take less chip damage. And that's just crazy, because we've got monsters like Legiacrus and Omega doing absurd amounts of chip damage, and none of the guard weapons can keep up. Playing a guard weapon against a modern 9-star monster is miserable. And even skills like Guard Up don't really help with this, because we've got such limited slots in Wild. This is something Guard Weapons and Charge Blade especially struggles with, the fact that we're so skill taxed that we need to waste slots other weapons don't need to. The weapons with a shield are supposed to be the defensive weapons, and yet you've got an aggressive weapon like Greatsword, just tanking hits, dishing out true charge, and completely outclassing the defense of these so-called defensive weapons. Fine. Place it here. Be that way. I'm gonna spill all the tomatoes though. I've never been one to really follow the meta, so as you can see from my gameplay here, I'm gonna use a good mix of sword attacks and axe attacks, but realistically, that's not the best way to play the weapon right now. If I use too many sword attacks and I don't manage to go into axe mode against monsters like Seregios, for example, my damage is going to struggle and my hunts are going to take an absurd amount of time. So I'd like to see some of the power shifted back into the sword and shield form, specifically by making it so you can charge your sword faster. I don't understand why they took away the shortcut to that in Wilds again after giving it back to us in Rise, after taking it away in Rise. If I had to boil it down to a single point, Charge Blade's biggest misstep in Wilds is that it has such a wide toolkit, and yet we're shoehorned into such a basic playstyle. And things only get worse in multiplayer. Like, if you're trying to keep up your axe mode in multiplayer, you're gonna struggle, you're not gonna get those wounds, the monster's gonna target other players, all of a sudden you can't get a perfect parry off because it's just the monster keeps missing you or it keeps going after someone else. And the moment your axe mode is no longer up, you're gonna have to rely on SAD or sword attacks and just waiting for a moment to get the axe mode back up. And that's just miserable, it's not fun. It really takes away from the weapon's uniqueness. I'm gonna die! I personally would like to see a slight animation speed increase to the axe mode's animations. It's no longer sustainable for Charge Blade to have such absurdly long animations on every single attack when the monsters have gotten to the speed they have. We objectively can't release our attacks as freely as something like Greatsword can. Greatsword's true charged may be difficult to reach, but we don't have the attack options Greatsword has. Greatsword can tackle and go straight into an attack, and it doesn't have to commit to its attacks fully, it can partially charge or tackle again. With Charge Blade, once you've commit, you've commit. You don't have guard points in Axe mode that you can fall back to. You don't have an offset you can fall back to. You're just stuck in Axe mode, and I think that's the most annoying part of Charge Blade right now. The fact that you're forced to stay in Axe mode for so long, and yet Axe mode has to be the least fun part of the weapon to engage with. The moment I have to stay in Axe mode for long periods of time, that's when the weapon starts to become really unfun to play. And that's where the weapon wants us to stay right now. Charge Blade's always been about charging in sword mode and discharging in axe mode, but right now that balance is a bit broken because you can sustain your charge for so long while in axe mode. We need to be able to expend more energy in axe mode more reliably. If we're truly going to spend as much time as we are in axe mode right now, then our defensive options are going to need to improve in axe mode. I can only get about 1 AED on Sergio's before I have to panic and go back to sword mode because I can't reliably react to anything he's going to do in axe mode. We need something that helps our defensive options in axe mode, but it can't be a good enough defensive option to where we constantly want to stay in axe mode. It's the experience you're gonna get with most of these new 9-star faster monsters. Once you get good at the hunts, you'll find more openings, sure, but you're never gonna be in that fun zone of Charge Blade where you let off axe attacks, you maybe get the occasional SAD, you shift back to sword and shield, you charge the sword, you get a couple good hits in, you get a parry, and then you go back to axe mode. That's just not how the weapon's currently played. So what can we do to fix this? Capcom actually has a support form on their website that you can fill in, giving them suggestions on what you think should be changed. Now I'm not going to give explicit directions on what you should tell them, just think about everything I've said in this video and think what you yourself would want for the weapon. These are just my personal opinions and what I would personally like to see in the weapon as a person with countless hours in these games using this weapon. Hopefully, if enough of us get together and send Capcom our suggestions, we'll actually see some real change with this weapon. Anyway, that's all I had to say for this video. If you enjoyed my content, feel free to hit the like button, and if you want to see more from me, make sure to subscribe. That's all for this video, guys. Have a good one.